In this lesson, we will build a control object for the mech's center of mass. Control objects are what animators would use to animate a model. Instead of them having to select each piece on our mesh and animate that way, which would be very inefficient because they would have to then track keyframes on each piece. It's a lot of pieces, right? So instead of having them do all that, instead a rigger would come in and they would design a control that functions a certain way. That way, the animator can just use that control and bring the asset to life. So in this case, the control that we will design will control the character's upper body essentially. Let's go ahead and get to it. What we'll do is go ahead and create a cube, and we will trace points along that cube to create a curve that we'll use as our control object. Curves are nice because by default they don't render. And we can color code them, and we can get really creative with them to kind of make our rig look more interesting. We shouldn't spend too much time in that process, but it is nice to be creative, right? So we can go ahead and create somewhat of a chest plate, something that resembles a chest plate with our curve. So let's go ahead and bring up the cube a bit. We'll then go ahead and move to the Create menu. Now, let's go to the CV Curve tool, go to our option box. We'll reset the settings so yours match mine. We'll go ahead and work with the linear curve type, simply because we're tracing a cube. But if you wanted to, you can create a rounder shape by using any other choice, any other curve degree. So I'll go ahead and leave that up to you. After we've built this, if you want to change up the design, you most certainly can. Let's go ahead and close out of our tool settings so we can get more space back, and we'll go ahead and start to trace this cube. We'll hold down the V key and snap. Now if you can't see any of your points, just go ahead and head over to Show and make sure you have everything visible. Let's go ahead and just choose All. And there it is, the CV. We'll hold down the V key and we'll continue to trace until we've managed to create, again, a type of plate around the chest. If you want to, let's say, remove a point, simply press the Z key to undo back. I'll go ahead and hold down the V key and start to trace along this. I won't snap to every point. We might save that type of shape for another type of control. Alright, fantastic. Now, if you, let's say, forget to fill in an edge. Let's say if I were to go ahead and press the Z key to undo back and then hit Enter. Let's go ahead and delete our cube now. Let's say if we forget to snap to a point. No worries, we can go ahead and grab our curve, and then if we were to use the spacebar to access our hotbox, we can go to the Edit Curves menu. Let me go ahead and tear this off so you can see the tool we're trying to access, and it's the Add Points tool. Let's go ahead and select that and take a look. It basically brings us right back to our CV Curve tool, and now we're able to finish out our curve. We'll just hold down the V key and snap to that last point and hit Enter. Nice. Okay, so from here, let's say we go ahead and rename this object to stay organized. For all animated objects, we'll go ahead and give them a prefix of anim, so it's very clear to animators that this is the control that you should use. So that's anim underscore COG for center of gravity 01. Nice. Now let's say we go ahead and do this. We'll go ahead and take the object and we'll move it up so it's placed right where the center should be controlled from. Great, and this is just one way we can handle this. If you would like to learn more rigging techniques for characters, you could always take a look at Introduction to Character Rigging. And then from there you can move to pushing your control rigs beyond the basics. What I'll do is go ahead and press F8 to go to CV mode. And then with all of our CVs selected, we can go ahead and start to scale down the shape. Fantastic. What's great about moving things in component mode is that the actual pivot of the object will remain exactly where we placed it, and we're just moving the shape at this point. So if we were to go ahead and move the shape all the way over here and then press F8 to go back to object mode, you can see the pivot is still there. So you can get really creative with your controls this way. I'll just go ahead and undo back to bring the curve back to where it was before, we can go ahead and start to kind of have this conform to the chest piece. I might grab the last 2 points and the points above. We'll go ahead and hold down Control Shift and Marquee Select to grab them, and then we can go ahead and scale the points in the x-axis to taper them to create a more interesting looking shape, and there we have it. So now let's go ahead and freeze transforms on this object to clean it up. We can then head over to our outliner. I'll go to the perspective outliner view. Let's say we go ahead and do this. We'll go ahead and take this object and we'll parent it to our mech group by pressing the P key after we have control clicked the group to store it there. And now let's go ahead and do a bit of organization here. We're going to essentially take everything we have inside of our mech group except for the center of gravity control. Let's go ahead and group those objects with Control G. Once we have done that, we'll go ahead and name this group. This group will be renamed to Model 01. That way, if we're trying to access our geometry, we can go to the model group. I'll now go to our transform channels, right click and choose lock and hide selected so we know that this should not move. A lot of times when the model moves instead of the control rig, we run the risk of pieces flying off into the distance with double transformations. So we have to be really careful about that. So we're just trying to stay organized so we can prevent this. Now what I'd like to do is go ahead and take the objects that the center of gravity control should drive, and I'd like to group those together. So that's the body of the mech. Let's go ahead and control click his tubes. The screen, we'll control click that as well. The thrusters, let's go ahead and grab those. We have the shield to select. Great. And we'll also grab the shoulders. Let's see. That should be about everything for now. I think we're just about there. I'll grab the front decal, the body base, that looks good, and the body base sphere. Alright, fantastic. The hip socket, I think that we can go ahead and select that as well. I think that that'll work out well because when we start to rig the legs, we'll just make sure that everything connects back into these hip sockets. So I think we'll be fine selecting that. And now, with all of these highlighted, we're going to essentially group them again. So let's go ahead and press Control G. We're going to go ahead and name this Body 01. Fantastic. And now what we could do is basically stop the lesson here. Let's go ahead and finish out our center of gravity control in the next lesson.